Hey YouTube, Wyoming's Elkaholic. Hey, I'm here today with another video. I'm going to show you guys on snowblower auger drive repair. So behind me, I have a beautiful Craftsman 2 826. And if you're ever wondering what those numbers mean, 8 means how many horsepower the engine is, 26 means that's how wide the clearing size is for the augers. So, in other words, 26 inches from here to here. So, I got a new selfie stick kind of tripod thing I'm working with. And it's not very tall, so not very impressed with it so far. But anyways, it'll probably help with my study shots as far as something sitting next to me. So I want to kind of show you guys this. So this snowblower came in for basically a guy that I had sold it to a few years back. This thing sucks. Sorry. Try to edit this out. Anyways, so a guy that I sold it to a couple of years ago has been using it. Everything was fine until this last season, and then he says, well, basically this season, and he's like, hey, if you want that snowboard back, I'll just give it to you. And I offered to fix it for him for pretty much nothing, and he said, no, just come take it. So anyways, I ended up taking it back on trade-in. And there's a couple things I just want to go through with you guys on Diagnostics as far as augers and the drive systems on these, because he said, well, just quit blowing snow, which he's right. It fires up, the tracks move, everything's fine as far as the rest of the snowblower. It's just the augers. And so when I first started it up, took it out of the truck, both the augers were spinning fine. And initially he told me, well, the back auger spins fine, but the front auger seems to be very slow. So immediately I'm thinking the front gear, because there's a shaft that comes from the back auger to the front auger. There's a shaft, and it's a drive shaft, and it comes into a front gearbox that drives the two sides of the front auger. Basically, if you want to call it the stage 1 auger. And so a lot of times what happens is, and this one is no exception, I'll be fixing it today, but a lot of times what happens is people put bolts in those, and since I sold it to the guy, he put bolts in it after the shear pins broke, I guess. I don't know. I would never want to sell one with bolts in it. Maybe it's something I overlooked, but I'm not perfect. Things happen. But anyways, I think the shear pin's broken. He might have put bolts in it. But so what happens is if you bolt those shear pins where the shear pins were, that it's kind of I don't know if it's brass. It is a softer metal. I think it might be a softer brass, but it's a worm drive almost in the end of that shaft that drives those two side gears. And so what'll happen is that'll actually strip out. And so and when he was kind of explaining that the back one spins really fast, the front one doesn't hardly work, that's immediately what I was thinking, right? But that's not the case, and I'll show you my diagnostics on that as well. But just so you know, if you guys have bolts where the shear pins should be, the shear pins are there to protect other parts of the snowblower, the main one being that front gearbox. So just remember that. So this is your front gearbox, and it has, like I said, these two side gears. You know, I mean, you can kind of think of it as a rear diff of a car or something, if you will. You know, you'd have the main ring gear in here, which then these side gears would come in and connect to the ring gear, and everything would spin, yada yada yada. But this kind of has, it's more of a worm drive that comes in, and then these side gears come in each side and contact the worm drive, and that'll strip out. But that's not our problem. There's a couple ways to test that. Dang, phone's slowing down here. But let me reset this. But here, so I already took the belt off. What I am going to do is put the belt back on, and then I'll show you guys how I diagnosed this and how everything happened. Okay, so I got the video working a little better. It's not panning as bad. But so yeah, a couple of things you can do is as you're running this, you can pin the auger drive up there and then watch the augers, right? And so if that back one's spinning and this front one isn't, okay, these will spin in unison. See that? Then this gearbox is shot if that's the case. And you should be able to take one side or the other and move it. But you can see this one's locked up, right? And when you turn stage 2, stage 1 turns. So that tells me that most likely this is fine. Now you can get them to where they maybe don't have quite the specs they used to. The clearance has grown a little bit over time, the wear of the lash, to where when you get it in heavy enough snow, it'll slip. But, you know, as I move this, it's still moving that. So I don't see any slippage in that front differential. My problem was the belt. So again, you know, you pull this, right? You can watch the bracketing here, right? So a couple things. Your cable could potentially stretch, right? You could possibly have a mechanical hang up. I actually had one that wasn't working, and this was just all rusted up, and I took all this apart, cleaned it up, and lubricated it. And that helped, right? Or maybe your spring's a little stretched out, and they have adjustments here for that. But that's not the problem. Because with this engaged, you can watch this tensioner. So this tensioner goes that far. What it does, if you're not familiar, it's kind of 101 stuff here, but that tensioner basically takes the slack out of this belt, which creates friction in the belt from this pulley to transfer power to this pulley. This bottom pulley is, you guessed it, the drive for your auger system. So if you have a slippage here, right, or a failure here, both augers are most likely going to be acting the same. So most likely your problem's in the belt, or if you have both augers acting the same, it's in the belt or it's in your cable system. So one way to kind of look at this too, you can see this has a max kind of clearance it can go up to. And I've kind of checked it, and there's really no slop there. It kind of goes up as far as it can. And I'll kind of show you. What I'll do is I'll pin that down, and then we'll start this up, and I'll kind of show you the slip that's in this belt. The reason why this is a little bit harder to test in that way is simply because both the augers were spinning fine until you actually hit deep snow or wet snow. And what was going on was as soon as you gave the augers any bit of resistance, right, we had this belt engaged. Well, you could see this pulley was spinning, but the belt was not moving. Why? Because the V in the belt is no longer thick enough to make good friction between the drive pulley from the engine and the drive pulley to the drive shaft to the auger system. So, like I said, you can test it by hitting hard snow or deeper snow, and then you'll kind of notice that it quits blowing. At that point, like I did, I kept this pinned, right? And then I'd come back here, and I was throwing a bunch of big chunks of snow into this, and I was watching it. The stage 1 and stage 2 both lagged greatly. So, you know, kind of an easy test there. like I said, you can pin this back. Another thing you can probably do that would probably be much, I guess a little bit safer is pin this back, engage that, right? And then turn the auger by hand. And if you can turn the auger by hand, basically you're overcoming, you shouldn't be able to. This should keep this so tight you couldn't turn that auger by hand. So with this engaged, if you can turn the auger by hand, which you can on mine, you'll see that this down here, so in that case, you'll see that this will be moving, right? But this belt pretty much will be staying still because there's not enough friction to grab the engine. And you're going to have to overcome the compression on the engine anyways. That's kind of partly why you wouldn't be able to turn it by hand, is because you're going to have to overcome the compression of the engine. And pretty much, if your belt's good, you shouldn't be able to move this with that engaged, if that makes any sense. So, and obviously, just so you guys know too, if you're going to do that test, you're going to have to do it off stage 1, because stage 2, how the gears are set up, that's not going to work. So reach in there, try to turn it stage 1, and have that handle engaged. So test it that way up there. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change this belt. So I already bought the belt. I've already had this off. So pretty much, just so you guys know, and I don't know, I'm going to try to show you this too, where my dang flashlight is. But down in there is a brake. Where's the camera on this side? So there's a brake right here, okay, that brakes the auger. So it's like a lawnmower. So on lawnmowers, they have an engine brake. So when you let go of that bail handle up there, what's going to happen is there's a spring brake system, and this brake pad essentially is going to come and slam on top of the flywheel. And so what that does is it stops the engine right away, which in turn at the bottom of the mower is going to stop the blade, because it's all connected on the same shaft, from the crankshaft and the flywheel down to the well, basically it's the output of the crankshaft at the bottom of the mower, but a lot of times there's a blade adapter or something down there too, a drive system sometimes, or self-propelled. But it'll stop all of that. And the purpose of this brake here, I don't know if you can see it, it's connected kind of on a bracket. So this is almost a U bracket, more like a V bracket. So it comes down and it pivots right here, and it comes off that spring. So it pivots, and pretty much as you pull that tension in, the tensioner you can see comes in, and then that brake comes out because it's on a V pivot. So, the first step is to essentially, what we want to do is walk it off here. These guards I've already kind of pushed back a little bit. You can loosen the bolts and then turn them back. And then once we're done, we'll push them back in and tighten the bolts. So at this point, you have the top part off. So I'm trying to look at the best way to possibly do this. But so you can see that brake still has the belt pinched in the pulley. So, and you're gonna have to come off. There's another pulley down here on the bottom that goes to the drive from the engine here. So you almost have essentially 2 output shafts. This one here drives your gearing for your tracks and everything. So you essentially have 2 outputs on the crank here. This one is just probably a gear drive. This is definitely the main crank. It's more at the position that it should be as far as the main crank, and then this is an auxiliary that is probably gear driven off of this. It's all sitting down here in the bottom of the engine, or I guess on the front of the engine, you could say. Anyways, so you're gonna have to bring that belt around the back side. I don't know how well you guys can even see any of this, but you're gonna have to bring that belt around the back side, okay? And you can work it between. That's the drive pulley for the tracks, and then here's your drive pulley for the augers. So you have to pull that belt between those two. That's the gap, right? And then you get it to where, okay, so now you have to fish it. So we have to release that brake and fish that out. And doing that one-handed is going to be kind of hard. So I'm going to try to find a way to... Now, again, I turned you guys around, but here's the brake that's sitting down there. So I'm going to go ahead and depress this handle. And I'm going to have to walk this out that side because of the way that crank is. So, yeah, what we're going to have to do is actually pull this belt through the back still. So you're actually going to have to take the end of the belt under this pulley because this bracket too. So, or you could do it this way if you wished. Take this out the back, and then you're going to have to take this around the edge of the pulley. Either way will be sufficient. But yeah, so I have that depressed, trying to release that brake to get it out. So it's kind of a pain because this bracket's in the way. So when you move that, essentially what it's doing is pinching it up here and releasing it down there. So the key here is to don't be impatient, kind of walk that back and forth, and you'll have to get a screwdriver like I did last time. And we're going to try to, just going to push that belt through. Got it released. Boom. Here's the old belt. You guys can probably see one good way to tell is if you look at it from the side or head on here, you can kind of tell you got a lot of burn marks, but there's not, you're kind of looking for the surface area here, right? Not a lot of surface area here at the end of the V. And you kind of look, and that is probably sitting clear inside this drive pulley. So let me show you the new belt so you have a comparison. Here's a good comparison, guys. This is the exact same belt. I'm going to flip it inside out as well so you can see, right? So you see the thickness difference? Not only is the V wider, but I mean, you can really see a difference in width. So this isn't even as wide as the tip of this flat blade, right? From end to end. This one is wider by, I don't know, another third. No, not quite that much, but you know, that's not even as wide as the tip, and this is wider than that. So you got the end of the V is bigger, but if you just look at this, and the camera may not show it, you can see a major thickness difference in the V itself as well on the sides, not just the end of the V. Anyways, just so you know, in case you didn't know, that's why they call them a V belt, okay? And they sit inside these pulleys here. So what we're going to do... Sorry about that, YouTube. As you can see, my phone is really not cooperating. It's being a pile of garbage. So it seems like if it gets below 60%, anything, it turns into a piece of crap. So I've got it plugged in. So you can see up there, you may not be able to see, the one handle's up, that handle's depressed. So a good way to test this, you can turn the crank. You can tell, I can see it, but it turns the shaft, the drive shaft for the augers. And you can come back here, and as I turn the engine shaft, the system to turn the drive augers is working. So again, just a quick recap. When I first got this, the guy said that the rear auger seemed to be working, the front auger wasn't. I confirmed that the shaft between the two seems to be working just fine, because as I turned stage 1, Stage 2 turned the same. And there was no slop or give. This is through the pins there. Which, by the way, I will be putting shear pins in here and taking these freaking bolts out. Because that's what will tear this gear out eventually. So, the gearing is fine. Like I said, that you just need to test that between stage 1 and stage 2. Okay? If you're spinning stage 1, and it would turn easier, it's just I got that depressed, so I'm dragging the engine when I turn that as well. So if you can turn stage 1, stage 2 is turning, you're fine. One thing you can do is grab, without it running, grab stage 2 and turn stage 1 by hand, which I also did. And you can feel the play between the two through the gears. So in other words, basically you're feeling on this side of the gears and you're feeling on that side of the gears. So turn stage 1 or turn stage 2, grab stage 1, okay? And like I said, if you don't feel any slop there, if it's locking up fine and you're not able to turn one without the other, this gear is fine. One thing to check, like I said, this is depressed. One thing to check is this linkage, okay? I had this linkage on one that was so freaking rusted up and stuck that it wasn't really engaging all the way. So, and there was numerous problems with that one. It was missing a bolt here too, so there was slop there as well, so you weren't getting the full travel with the cable because the cable's on the end of this handle. So make sure your handle bolts are there. But make sure that this is coming up all the way. I mean, it had 1/4 of an inch to come up yet, but that's fine. We're plenty engaged. The new belt, when I engage that, it is a lot stiffer than it was before. So, you know, if you're gauging that handle and it doesn't feel like there's much behind it, and this linkage seems to be coming up all the way, check this belt. So, like I said, this bearing could be bad and seize up on you. If that happens, you'll have some drag, you'll smell burning belts, etc. This bearing's in good shape. There's a set bolt down here. Make sure that that set bolt is affixed in and connected to the shaft, the drive shaft for the augers. Because if that wasn't the case, this would be spinning the main pulley or the drive pulley for the augers, but the shaft wouldn't, and you would see that bolt spin with the auger or with the pulley drive, the pulley on the end of the auger drive. Sorry, but there's a little space in there, and you can't see it, and I can't show it to you because I don't have freaking light. There you go. Get some sunlight in there, dummy. So you see there's a little space between the pulley and the collar. That's the actual drive shaft. So if this is spinning and that shaft is not spinning, that bolt right there has broken or come loose. That's another thing to check. So if you've checked that and both of them are turning at the same time or both of them are not turning, the front differential is probably okay. Your problem lies elsewhere. If stage 2 is turning and stage 1 is not turning, that gear is shot. So moving back, like I said, check the bracketing. Make sure the bracketing is coming up all the way. Make sure you've got proper travel on the cable. Okay, once you've done that, check your belt. See how flush this belt sits with the edge of the pulley? It's actually a little bit out as far as it rises further than the pulley. That's good. The other belt was completely sunk in that V, so check your belt. Make sure that's good. Make sure this isn't seized up when you're in here. You know what I mean? And that's going to be your problem. It's going to be the belt, that pulley. I've never seen a drive shaft break, but it could be that pulley come loose off the drive shaft. Could be that gearbox. Could be your linkage. Could be your cable. So check those things. You'll find the problem as far as the auger drives go. If I can tell you this, I did one the other day and I didn't do a video. If your drive isn't working, this pulley down here comes in and there's actually a friction disc, and I got it laying here on the ground, I think still. I don't know. Okay, there it is right there. This is a friction disc, and these are inside of there, and what it does is basically it creates drive from that shaft into the system, the drive system for the tracks. And if your friction disc looks like this, throw it away, get a new one. So that could be the reason your track is not turning, if that's also why you're watching this video on the Craftsman too. So let's get this fired up, put back together. I just lost track of where it was. I need to change the oil on this. So your cover is going to slip on. It's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, but good news for you, plastic does flex a little bit, and I really don't want to take the chute collar off. So I'm going to just wiggle it back and forth until it comes on. Boom. Ah. Auger's engaged. Disengage auger. Spin easy. So it works like a champ. We fixed it. However, Christmas time, be careful of your yard decorations, because, you know, that sucks. Anyhow, as usual, this is Wyoming's Alcoholic. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that this video was helpful in troubleshooting your snowblower as far as auger drives and track snowblowers and Craftsmans and anything else. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to put them in the comments down there. Thank you for watching. Stay classy, Wyoming. Like and subscribe, please. Plenty more headed your way. Hope it gets a little warmer. It's dang cold in Wyoming right now. Happy New Year, folks. Thanks for watching. Stay classy, Wyoming.